the folks when it's time to vote on 8, 16, 17, and 19 to come on in and use their clicker. And the reason why we're doing that is not to segregate anybody. It's because the Wi-Fi signal or the radio signal is only going 120 feet. So we need everybody to come on in and hit that, okay? So let's do a test. Drew, are you with me?
Yeah, I think we're having some AD issues. The voting is open right now.
The voting's open? Okay. Oh, yeah, we got to turn the green light on.
It's not ready yet, though.
Okay. Let's just give Drew a second. Oh, and the other thing I want to mention, because we do have folks in the cafeteria that are wanting to stay in that space, they have the right to come in and vote. There is a delay, 45 seconds to a minute. So we've got to be patient. We're going to turn on the light, but the moderator's going to ask you to all be patient and be quiet while we bring them in here. So the space we're in is calling for a lot of patience. I'm sorry? Yes for present, and yes, just hit the yes button, and it's going to, as soon as we get a little bit of tech stuff going on, I can see the blue lights back here. It's going to scroll, okay? And while he's waiting, I was a great tap dancer in high school. I could do a little dance for you.
It does say Shakespeare in the Park.
There you go. Yeah, here we go. We could do it. We could sing a couple of bars, you know? All right. How's it looking, Drew? Okay. All right. The other thing, I got my cowboy boots on. The other thing is if we have staff in the building, we would like the staff to come in and sit in the back as you normally would for any town meeting. So we were keeping them in the cafeteria for space issues, but
There's very few of them.
there's only a handful tonight? Okay. Yeah, I drew the short straw. I'm here. Okay, here we go.
All right.
All right. So go ahead. Yep, that looks good. That looks nice. And then will you, let's see, do we have any more? What are we at, 140? Anybody else not hit the button? Okay, let's close it. And again, we have the sign-up sheets, so I do a match, okay? I think I had 147 of you the other night, but we ended up having 162 when we did the cross-reference on the signatures. So we will always err to the late sign-ins, okay? All right. And does anybody feel they need a test run, or are we good to go? Good to go? All right. Madam Moderator, you're up next.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. Okay. Be careful of this cord. Yes. There we go. All right. Just waiting for it to finish scrolling. All right, I'm present. All right. Town meeting requiring 100 members for a quorum and having 142 in attendance. I see there is sufficient number of members present to permit us to open the meeting, and I do so declare. Welcome to all, to our town meeting members. Welcome back for night 2 of Springtown meeting. I also want to welcome again members of our town staff, members of boards and committees, our town consultants, and our article presenters this evening, as well as residents and other visitors who have joined us tonight. Welcome one and all. I am Heather Von Maren, your town meeting moderator. I asked to be identified as Madam Moderator throughout the meeting. I am joined, as you all know, by Miss Mary Ellen Lannon, our town clerk, but also she is the clerk of the meeting. The Department of Health has asked me to reiterate that the mask requirements are still in effect, and we ask that for the comfort of those around you, you please wear a mask unless you have a documented medical reason not to. If you have any concerns or questions regarding this mask mandate, you should direct your concerns to Ms. Jennifer Murphy. They are the individual designated and will be located outside the auditorium if anyone in attendance requires our support. This evening, the agenda before us is Article 8, to authorize the Select Board to petition the General Court regarding voting rights. 16, to appropriate monies for East Side CIP Project 1 Sanitary Sewer Evaluation Survey. Article 17 and also Article 19. These are current 2022 issues, and in such, our Council has noted that these are in order to hear before us and before the last Monday of April. All fiscal 2023 items, along with Article 18, will be taken up on Monday, April 2nd. Residents who are in the vicinity of the sports court, that is Article 18, the Select Board is holding meetings for you on Friday at 3 p.m. via Zoom, and also Saturday 9 a.m. at the site. As our agenda is, again, this evening is actually rather limited, we will not be breaking if possible. If you need to take a break, please do your best to do so in between speakers or articles. Typically, as in most situations of government, leaving the room in the middle of proceedings is frowned upon. In this particular instance, we were going to take this approach just for now to minimize the length of the meeting, but also allow members socially distanced breaks if needed. As I'd like to end, and most of my comments to the meeting, we must bear in mind as we join together as a legislative body of Winchester, not only our personal interests, but all those of our community and each other as a whole. As we deliberate, let each of us here tonight maintain an open mind, an open heart, graciousness when we disagree, a healthy sense of humor, so that the business of this meeting will not be a source of division among us when our business here is finished. We will continue our meeting tradition and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may please be seated. Moving to page 8. Page 11, Article 8 of your Town of Winchester 2022 Springtown Meeting Motion Booklet, which is with the green cover. It is moved and seconded that the town meeting authorize the Select Board to petition the General Court to enact legislation substantially in the form below, and further authorize the Select Board to approve amendments to such legislation before its enactment by the General Court that shall be within the scope of the general objectives of the petition, or take any other action in relation thereto. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in General Court, assembled and by the authority by the same as follows. An act to extend local voting rights to all adult residents of the town of Winchester. Section 1. Notwithstanding Section 1 of our Chapter 51 of the General Laws or any other general or special law, rule, or regulation to the contrary, any legal resident of the town of Winchester that is otherwise eligible under all provisions for voters in Section 1 of Chapter 51, other than citizenship under the laws of the United States of America, shall be considered a qualified voter of the town for the purpose of voting in all town elections, and shall be eligible to participate and vote in all town elections, stand for and participate as a member in town meetings, and sign all nominating, warrant, and other petitions authorized by town bylaws. Section 2, the act shall take effect upon its passage. This article is anticipated to be a very robust and informative discussion among our meeting. Article 8 authorizes the Select Board to petition the General Court to change voting rights. We are not debating the merits of our country's immigration laws. We are debating the policy and not people. Proponent of the motion, Mr. Philip Cooney, please join us. Mm-hmm. Yes, you may take your mask off to speak.
I am Phil Coonley of the Network for Social Justice's Immigration Justice Committee, IJC. I will speak briefly to Article 8, a voting eligibility initiative that we've been pursuing for several years. The town meeting is the bedrock of New England town-level representative democracy. For me to address you is a first since moving to Precinct 3 46 years ago. I feel honored. The IJC was delighted last June when the League of Women Voters of Winchester joined the drive to pass what is now Article 8. Almost 1,300 Winchester adults who are legal residents but not yet U.S. citizens are now, by mass state law, not permitted to vote in our local elections. Many of these residents are civically engaged in Winchester, attending parent-teacher conferences, volunteering their time, or running a business. All are paying taxes for our public schools, library, police, fire department, roads, and other town government services. Yet no non-U.S. citizen is allowed to vote in selecting or being a candidate for Winchester's leadership, in deciding Winchester's policies, in approving Winchester's local taxes, or in directly influencing how Winchester's revenues will be spent. Adopting non-citizen residents' full participation in our local democratic mechanisms would benefit us all, and is in line with our updated updated Town of Winchester Human Rights Statement. It would help cement Winchester's reputation as a most welcoming community, showing great respect for its immigrant residents. We would be joining about 10 other massive municipalities that have already pledged to give their non-citizen residents voting privileges in local elections when the state allows this home rule authority. Our state senator, Jason Lewis, could speak to when that might happen. Fears about approval are many, but I think misplaced. 4 examples. Isn't this a radical new idea? No, it's a return to the local voting policy of our country's first 150 years. Won't it lessen the desire to become U.S. citizens? No. There are many other benefits with U.S. citizenship, and exercising new local voting privileges may cause some to want more than ever to become U.S. citizens, so they may also vote in state and federal elections. Won't these new voters be easily manipulated? No. Non-citizen residents are not likely to be even more susceptible to manipulation than those of us who have been U.S. citizens since birth. Indeed, Winchester's immigrants have an average high education plus international experiences, which may make them even less susceptible. Wouldn't importation be expensive? No. We contacted 7 towns in Maryland. It's a different state, different rules. But anyway, we did our best. And each of them responded similarly. There was a little labor to set up a separate non-citizen voter registration list. But costs were not even tracked. The same too small to track is reported from Montpelier, one of the 2 towns in Vermont having their first non-citizen voting this spring. The other Vermont town, Winooski, is a refugee settlement community, which reports its efforts this spring were significant, though they still didn't track costs, and think most were tied to a substantial outreach to encourage registration. This outreach was discretionary, not required by the state. Here in Winchester, we likely would have several organizations and faith groups alerting our legal non-citizen residents of their new opportunity to register to vote locally. Like many of you do now, just one newly enfranchised immigrant may volunteer ideas, effort, and leadership to town government far outweighing any added election costs. The following is a letter from resident Anna Maria, a.k.a. Mika Vander Wansum. From 1900 to 1996, I lived in Washington, D.C. At the time, I was 28 and a U.S. green card holder since I was 16. My father was asked to come work here from the Netherlands, so the whole family got green cards. I wanted to become a U.S. citizen, but at the time it would have meant giving up my Dutch citizenship, which I was not prepared to do. I found out that several towns in Maryland near D.C. had non-citizen legal resident voting, which I thought and think is a great idea. I would have liked to have voted in local elections. I was working and paying taxes and thought it made sense for me to be able to participate in local voting so as to feel more connected to my community and to feel like I am contributing to the well-being of my neighbors and larger neighborhood. Civic engagement is so important for healthy and active communities, and I thought ingrained in the American way of life. I am now a resident of Winchester, Mass., and became a citizen of the United States in January 2020. With Dutch regulation changes, I'm able to have dual citizenship. I am a relieved and happy voter. I strongly support non-citizen legal resident voters. They have so much to contribute to our communities. Missing out on their engagement would be a tremendous loss of opportunity. Thank you for your work on this important issue. Best wishes. Now back to my closing words. Your approval tonight of Article 8 would send a message within Winchester and beyond that you value our legal non-U.S. citizen residents' local participation as highly as you do our U.S. citizen residents. A vote against or to delay would sadly send the opposite message, again, both within and beyond our town. Please vote yes. Susan?
Turn this on. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, town meeting members, for considering this article. It's a pleasure to be in front of you as a member of the League of Women Voters. To start with, voting rights in the United States have not been static. They've evolved and changed over time. In the 1700s, only male property owners over 21 are allowed to vote. The Massachusetts Constitution talks about voting in terms of inhabitants. Okay, I can hear better, sorry. And the Massachusetts Constitution from the 1700s talks about voters and voting and elections in terms of inhabitants. It says, all elections ought to be free, and all the inhabitants of this Commonwealth have the equal right to elect officers and be elected for public employment. Of course, that's been amended multiple times, and in 1855, U.S. citizenship was added as a requirement. African American men gained the right to vote with the 15th Amendment in 1870. In 1879, women in Massachusetts gained the right to vote for local school committees and to serve on them. In 1920, women gained the right to vote nationwide with the 19th Amendment. In 1971, the U.S. lowers the voting age from 21 to 18, widening the electorate. In 1971, I said that already, I'm sorry. And it is important to note that non-citizen voting persisted until into the 20th century, when Arkansas was the final state to end it in 1926. And non-citizen voting is the only category that became more restrictive. So why do we want to expand voting rights in Winchester? As Phil said, non-citizen legal residents pay taxes, own property, send their children to our schools, and contribute to our community in many ways, many of them living here for decades. There are over 1,200 adult foreign-born non-U.S. citizens in town, according to the most recent census. All residents are impacted by policies and actions of local government, and documented non-citizens deserve a voice in the decision-making. The principle of no taxation without representation was a powerful catalyst in our nation's founding, and we know that allowing non-citizen parents to participate on the local level also gives their children early engagement with American values and the ability to learn our system of government as they grow up. Children without involvement in their parents' voting are less likely to vote themselves. Non-citizen participation in the town's decision-making, non-citizen participation in town decision-making would make our town more inclusive and our government more representative of the town's actual inhabitants. So what will happen immediately if town meeting votes yes? Winchester would file a home rule petition, which goes to the state legislature. Both houses of the state legislature and the governor would have to approve it in order to enact the article's language. And then non-citizen legal residents, according to federal immigration law, primarily those with green cards and working visas, we believe, in our town, would be permitted to vote in town elections only, not statewide or federal elections. Winchester's town charter would then allow registered non-citizen voters to run for elected office at the local level. Implementation is not imminent. The state approval process will take time, and other cities and towns, similar home rule petitions have stalled in the state legislature. Our understanding is that in order to implement this, legislative action to change the state election law, other changes, in the state election law would be needed. And this would it'd be needed to enable the proper administration by municipal clerks. There have been bills filed to do this, but those have not been acted on either. What would implementation look like, assuming we scale all those hurdles? The Winchester Town Clerk, again, as Phil mentioned, would probably have to maintain separate voting registration forms and voter rolls. Ballots might need to be published in more than one language. The Secretary of the Commonwealth, again, if we change the election laws, would provide rules and regulations statewide. Also keep in mind that our town election takes place at the end of March, unlikely to overlap with a statewide election. And we are not alone in this. Brookline, Cambridge, many other towns have submitted similar home rule petitions for non-citizen voting. I believe Amherst first started attempting to implement this in the 1990s. Martin Luther King told us that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. This proposal really just seeks to bend that curve a little bit more quickly in our town. We hope you'll see the value of that and that you'll support it.
Ms. Verdicchio, your time's up. So, thank you. Further on the question, we begin with the recommendations of the town meeting's consideration from the boards and committees. First up, Chair of the Select Board, Mr. Richard Mucci.
Good evening, everyone. The Select Board voted favorable action on this article.
Thank you. Recommendation of Fincom by Dr. Blackwell, Chair of Fincom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Finance Committee initially was not going to vote on this because there were no financial implications, and then we discussed it more and realized we would like to know more about the financial implications. The additional work for the town clerk's office was noted by creating additional lists. So we voted 3 in favor, 6 against, 1 abstaining, with the main rationale of recommending that this article figure out what those costs would be and delay it to a later time because the timing was not seen as that critical right now because it wouldn't be implemented immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have a recommendation from the Chair of the Planning Board, Mr. Diabgirius. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend favorable action on Article 8. You wonder why the Planning Board has anything to say about Article 8? When we did the master plan a couple of years ago, one of the most important things was, one of our core themes was building community. And our goals, 2 goals: establish robust and effective communication between residents and town government, to increase community participation in town decisions with elevated awareness of town issues and initiatives, and also to expand community initiatives that increase cultural, ethnic, religious ability, and economic diversity and collaboration. We felt that the communication between a voter and town government is one of the most fundamental. And I should note that in my experience on the Planning Board, we have had groups of people who wanted to come and talk to us but felt uncomfortable in town hall because of the experience they had dealing with government. I think that having this sort of communication with the government is a first step in gaining trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Girius. Are there any boards or committees that have any recommendations for town meeting? Seeing no one rise at this time, members of town meeting, you may make your way to the microphones. When I recognize you to speak, please state your name and how you'd like to be identified and the precinct that you represent. I ask you to spread out and stand on the X's on the side aisles, please. Stage left, Mike. You may proceed.
Hi, I'm Jack Richard from Precinct 1. At the outset, I wish I didn't need to say this, but it needs saying. Opposition to non-citizen voters is not anti-immigrant, it's not xenophobic, and it is no way bigoted or racist. It's a reasonable position based on our history and on a reasonably modest estimation of what our future might be if laws like this would pass. 2 weeks ago, I did take part in a Zoom call held by the proponents of this article. I arrived with an open mind, and I have to say my first takeaway from the Zoom call was that the proponents of this article are really, really nice people. I'm glad to have them as neighbors. But my second takeaway was that these really, really nice people had a really, really bad idea, spectacularly bad and without merit. And let me explain why. There's two reasons mainly. It's a futile gesture, and it's wrong on the merits. It's futile because this town meeting has absolutely no authority or influence in determining who votes in local elections. That's entirely a creature of the state government. So this proposal starts out by saying, notwithstanding Mass General Laws, Chapter 51, Section 1, non-citizens can vote in Winchester. That is exactly like me saying, I'm going to propose an article that I'm going to levitate from this microphone, float around the auditorium, notwithstanding the law of gravity. Now that article might pass or it might not, but either way, it's not going to make me fly. That's what we're doing here. We're wasting our time. Now, on the Zoom call, I also learned that the towns like Cambridge and Amherst and Brookline and Newton, and honestly some other left-leaning towns, had already passed these articles. And as far back as 2004, they've passed these articles. And if you know how many people have voted in those towns in almost 20 years? Zero. Because this is, it's a it has no meaning to it. And in my view, let's be honest, this is not a grassroots groundswell of non-citizens yearning for the franchise. And this is not giving a voice to the voiceless. This is a group of activists trying to give their voice to the voiceless. They want to amplify their voice through the voiceless. And that's not social justice advocacy. That's political ventriloquism. It's the worst kind of virtue signaling because the ends it seeks, in my view, are not even virtuous. It's advocated in the name of justice and fairness, but the mere incantation of those words does not make it so. It will disincentivize citizenship. It absolutely will. It will devalue the concept of a citizen to the vanishing point. Now, we started this meeting pledging allegiance to the flag. If one of these folks becomes a town member, a meeting member, and they are citizens of some other country and not the United States, can they pledge allegiance to our flag? And what it does, too, is exactly the opposite of what we should be doing. These people who come here, we need them. They're great. They're great neighbors. We want them to join in fully. We want them to totally join us in the American experiment. That's the secret sauce of America. That's what we do so well. This will actually do them no favors. It will create a separate voting list, and by making it easy, you won't have to vote, and you'll create a permanent class of others, and that's not what we want here. We all want to join in the same American experiment here. I was disappointed to hear the League of Women Voters supported this motion. I went on their website and I read their mission statement and core values, and I'm taking these directly from the website. We encourage informed participation by citizens in government. Our goal is to empower citizens to make better communities. We believe citizenship requires knowledge. By definition, this article dilutes citizenship on a one-to-one ratio. Every time a non-citizen votes, a citizen's vote, if they happen to take the opposite side in the issue, is taken away. So I agree wholeheartedly with the core values of the League of Women Voters, but apparently they don't any longer. Now, years ago, President Kennedy used to like to quote Chesterton in saying, "Don't pull down a fence unless you know why it was put up in the first place." Now, limiting the vote to citizen adult residents is a fence of long standing with very good reason why it was put up. Let's not pull it down. Let's not vote on this positively, because if you want to influence our state legislature, and there's no limiting principle here, by the way. There are thousands of issues that belong at the State House and not at Winchester High School. Where do we weigh in? Where do we not? But if you want to influence your legislature, there's a thing called a telephone or a letter or an email. Our legislature, who I don't agree with on a lot of politics, but they're great at constituent service. They're dying to hear your opinion. And apparently our legislator supports this already. So what more can we do? Are we trying to influence legislators from other parts of the town? These are the kind of things. We have real work to do here that only we can do. Budgets, police, fire, schools. Let's pay attention to our knitting. Let's do the job we're here and no one else can do. And let's not spend a lot of our time and resources on these articles which have absolutely no effect. So I urge a no vote on this proposition. Thank you.
Please hold your applause.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Town meeting, Jen Liu, Precinct 2. I wish to be identified as Dr. Liu. And through you, Madam Moderator, I rise to speak to the town meeting to oppose this Article 8. I have the following reasons. Born and raised in Communist China, I came to this country for my American dreams. After living in this great country for 10 years, I call this my home, and I made a commitment to become a U.S. citizen. Over the years, I have really understood how precious citizens' voting rights are, and we should cherish and protect them. Proponents might have good intention, but I cannot agree with the approach. We cannot lower the bars to break the system. This is a clear path for non-citizens to become a U.S. citizen. The 5-year waiting period is a minimum time for a green card holder to really study American history, political and legal systems, and most importantly, appreciate true American values. This is so important for essential for becoming a responsible voter. As a naturalized U.S. citizen, a registered voter myself, I can personally testify that this is a valuable and a great journey, and we should not take a shortcut to undermine the integrity of our election system. According to the 2021 town census data, slightly different from the 2020 U.S. census data, there are 17,477 residents in the town, and 920 of them are non-citizens. So that is 5% of the total population. Out of those 5%, 34% are Chinese nationals, and none of the rest of the populations exceed 1% of the total residents. Voting is not the only way for a resident to get involved in our community. There are many other excellent platforms for all the citizens or residents to voice their concerns and make suggestions. So before we start talking about non-citizen voting, we should really ask the following questions. How many non-citizens actually have subscribed to town events? How many of them attend at least one public hearing over the past 5 years? And how many of them actually reach out at least once to a precinct town meeting members for any issues since they moved to this town? And how many of them were adversely impacted by a town meeting decision, while there has been absolutely no way for them to speak up or appeal? Allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections creates a lot of confusions and financial burdens. Non-citizens can use the exact same arguments to demand a vote in the state and the federal elections. Allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections means maintaining 2 sets of voter rosters. This definitely increased the work burden of our town clerk with added financial costs. How would you define legal and resident? How long do they have to be living in this town to be considered a resident? Proponents argue that allowing non-citizens to vote will increase the participation. According to town clerk's data, from 2017 to 2022. The highest turnout in our town election is 31%. Allowing 5% non-citizens to vote would have infinitesimal impact on the turnout. Winooski, Vermont story also showed that out of 618 non-citizens who are allowed to vote, only 17 voted. One also argues that non-citizens pay taxes and they should have the same right. Please remember, people paying or not paying tax, they equally enjoy most rights here in this country, such as work, education, healthcare, and so on. Naturalized citizens have taken an oath to defend this country and uphold our Constitution, while non-citizens have no such commitment. The slogan, taxation without representation, has been misconstrued here. If you think non-citizen taxpayers in this town have no representation, you're essentially saying non-citizen taxpayers in this country have no representation. So, should they be allowed to vote in state and federal elections? The effort should really be on how to educate voters and encourage them to get to know candidates and understand the issues. I have seen so many times that some voters simply ask for a voting cheat sheet in the CCP censored WeChat group. WeChat is a social chatting app. Here's one quote. "Give me a list of names I should vote." Oftentimes, we only saw a one-sided list of candidates in the WeChat group. But luckily, more and more voters have started asking the right questions. Legislature at the state and local level should not be set up in a way that conflicts with our Constitution. I have talked to citizens and non-citizens about this Article 8.
Dr. Yu, your time is up. Do you need an extension?
I'm finished up. So,
How much time do you need?
30 seconds.
Please proceed.
The majority understand that non-citizen voting goes against our laws, and that they all agree that allowing non-citizens to vote will make foreign meddling much easier, starting at the local level. Therefore, I urge all the town meeting members to vote no for Article 8. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Member on stage right, please hold your applause. For those town meeting members, we typically do not applause in between speakers. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening, fellow town meeting members. My name is Jack Lemenager. I represent the 6th Precinct along with 23 other people. While I applaud and respect the intentions and passion and the hard work put forth by this group who are the proponents for Article 8, I cannot support it. I wish to make 2 points about this. First of all, with regard to the taxation without representation argument, and secondly, with regard to American citizenship. First, proponents talk of taxation without representation, a term which Ms. Verdicio correctly said dates back to our Declaration of Independence. They argue that these non-citizens, by paying local taxes, ought to have a say in local government. Okay, but what about non-resident property owners? Some of the commercial real estate downtown is owned by non-residents, people who live in neighboring towns like Belmont, Medford, and Woburn. Year after year, they pay significant property taxes to Winchester, taxes that are directly affected by decisions made by this body and override elections, and they have no say in either. They cannot vote for town meeting representatives, and they cannot vote in override elections. I say that if you advocate for non-citizen taxpayers to vote in Winchester elections, so too should you advocate for the same right for non-resident taxpayers. Now, with regard to the matter of American citizenship, I personally know and am aware of many Winchester residents who are naturalized American citizens, and you probably do too. I know of new citizens who came from China, Canada, Australia, Brazil, Russia, South Africa, New Zealand, and Germany, and no doubt there are many others. These people have gone through an arduous process to become American citizens for which they are justifiably proud, and I joyfully celebrate their citizenship and warmly welcome them as my fellow American citizen. But as well-intentioned as Article 8 may be, I believe that it shows contempt and disrespect for those among us who made the commitment and the effort to become American citizens and earn the privilege of the vote. Article 8 trivializes their efforts, their hopes and their dreams, and their vote. It makes a mockery of the naturalization process and all that it stands for, a process that has made America what it is today, a nation of immigrants. For these reasons and more, I urge you to vote no for this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmenager. Ms. Schreiber?
Hi,
Oh,
I'm
please.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Liz Schreiber. I'm in Precinct 7. I've lived here for 11 years now. 9 of those I lived here as a permanent resident but non-citizen. I just squeaked my citizenship in right before the general election in 2020. And let me tell you, that was an emotional election. But it was actually all of the town elections prior to that meant more to me, and those I was not allowed to be involved in. I have 2 kids. When we moved here, they were 3 and 7. One was at the rec centre preschool department, the other was at Lynch. And we went through redistricting of the schools, had no say in that. We went through a potential rebuild of Lynch, had no say in that. There were a lot of different things, several overrides that were passed that I have to contribute to, but were not able to have any say in big decisions that impact my family, and I'm not able to contribute to those. Meanwhile, I was volunteering many hours a week at the preschool and at Lynch. I ran the field day for about 5 years. I was the co-chair of the President's Association, LPA for several years. All of those things I could do as a non-citizen, but I was not able to vote. And it did leave me feeling like a second-class citizen, and I guess because I was. And it was interesting how often it comes up in day-to-day life, particularly when you're at school. There'd often be other parents who would come up at pickup and say, can you sign me? I want to run for Precinct 7 or I want to run for Precinct 8. And I'm like, I can't. I'm not allowed to. There are a bunch of things that I was not able to get involved in. And I think that there's a big difference between voting in and participating in local politics and participating in a national general election and statewide politics. These are things that directly impact everybody who lives in town. And I know that they also affect people who own businesses here, but to a lesser degree. It's not determining which school your kids are able to go to. It's not determining a lot of things that really have a big impact on your world when you live here. I found Winchester a very welcoming place to move to. I got involved very quickly, and I was really surprised at how impactful local politics are. I've lived in 7 or 8 different countries, and all of them have been run in a very top-down way. Decisions about roading are made at a much higher level. Decisions about schools are made either on an individual school-by-school basis or at the national level. We have this amazing sweet spot here in Winchester where we get to impact what happens in our town fairly easily. And that's something that I think would be beneficial for all of those who are resident here to be able to participate in.
Thank you, Ms. Schreiber. Further on the question?
Thank you, Madam Moderator and fellow town meeting members. I'm Joan Miller, representing Precinct 6, and I'm speaking to you today as an immigrant. I came to the U.S. initially on a student visa, and then from 1981 to 2010, I was a resident alien, which is what others are calling a green card. I can tell you, actually, it hasn't been green for like more than 40 years. But in any case, I was a resident alien. I worked, I was married, I raised 3 children in Winchester, went to school, paid taxes happily, mostly. Had mortgages at 18% initially, things got better. But I really felt part of the community. I mean, I was engaged, I volunteered, I met people, I really felt welcomed, and I certainly, support the notion that we want to do that. Well, it was easy in most regards to be a resident alien. It didn't really limit me, but I couldn't vote. And it was something, actually as a woman that I felt, geez, these women went through all this stuff to get the vote in Britain and in the U.S. and in Canada, and I really want to participate in that as well. And I went through the process, studied my 100 congressionally picked questions so I would get them all correct. And went through that process very happily and very proudly was sworn in Faneuil Hall by Judge Young, whose mother was an immigrant and naturalized U.S. citizen. And it's just a wonderful notion. And becoming a U.S. citizen carries rights and privileges, and it's very, very meaningful to immigrants. And I think we don't want to take that away. I think, yes, what we deal with in the town is more local, but it's the bedrock of what being a citizen is about. And I just think that we should take that seriously. As others have said, let's not tear down something that was put there for good reason, and really celebrate our immigrants in their process to join us as citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Wei Han from Precinct 6. I've been working on this article with Mr. Kunle for more than 3 years, and I actually started thinking about non-citizen voting 9 years ago, shortly after I became a town meeting member and attended my first town meeting session here. A little background about myself. I was born and raised in China and came to the U.S. 30 years ago, moved into Winchester in 2003. And I've been started volunteering at Winchester School of Chinese Culture for more than 10 years. So I got to know a lot of Chinese American families there. And with more Asian Chinese residents moving into the town, and many of them were just like me, want to participate and contribute to the community, but didn't know where to start. So in 2016, I co-founded the Chinese American Network of Winchester, aimed to enhance neighborhood integration and to strengthen engagement in community affairs. So through these activities, I really got to know a lot of families and non-citizen residents. So I know them personally. So I want to give you some ideas who these people are. So according to our 2020 census, that there are 15% Asian American residents in this town, and the majority of them are Chinese Americans. So they share many similarities. First, most of them have advanced degrees, master or PhD degrees. They were educated and trained at the graduate schools here in the U.S., and they speak and understand and write English very well. Many of them published scientific papers here. Secondly, most of them own properties here, and they pay all taxes, even as a working visa holders. So non-citizens residents are mainly consist of working visa, H-1B visa holders, and green card holders. So even as a working visa holders, they have to pay all taxes, including Social Security and Medicare. And thirdly, that most of them have school-age children. They are very involved with school activities, community student activities. They pay very close attention to education-related issues. One example was the beginning of this month, Winchester Soccer Club asked the soccer players, the families, to go to participate a spring field cleanup. And so when I went there on that windy Saturday morning, I was, very happy to saw a good number of Chinese American young families there with their parents and with kids there helping out. Another important issue that a lot of people didn't realize that most Asian countries, such as China, Japan, India, Thailand, Malaysia, that do not allow dual citizenship. So become a U.S. citizen meaning that they have to abandon their original passport. And that becomes some issues for some of these residents because they're the only child of families. They have aging and ailing parents back in China. And this pandemic made things worse. And previously, there were multiple entries towards the visa people can use to go back to to China or other home countries. But now those visas are no longer valid during pandemic. They have to go through embassy to apply a very special one-time entry, and it was very hard to get. So that's going to delay or prevent a lot of these non-citizen residents to apply for their citizenship in the future. And one last thing I want to mention about these non-citizen residents, that they are mostly independents, and they have a very wide range of views on various issues. We debate, discuss issues openly, and I just, as you saw earlier, that my fellow Chinese American town meeting members, disagreeing with me. So we, by any means, this article is not designed to create a voting bloc that to change any election outcomes. These non-citizen residents, they have their own opinions on different things. They are not necessarily agreeing on all the time. This is just a way to encourage their participation in this. Give you some timelines. My personal...
Mr. Han, your time has been reached.
Okay, sorry, just one more minute.
How about 30 seconds?
30 seconds, okay.
With no
All
objection,
right.
we'll continue.
Yeah. All right. Voting, for me personally, is the most tangible expression of my commitment to our community and the democratic ideals upon which Winchester was founded. And voting is the core, it's at the core of diversity, equity, and inclusion. These people may not have citizenship. Their English may sound very differently from yours, and they may not live in this town as long as some of you did, but they sure love this beautiful community as much as you do. They sure love the concept of self-governing, and they want to be a part of it. And they sure have the same passion and commitment to build a strong, inclusive, prosperous, and resilient community, just like all of you do here tonight. So I hope you vote yes on this article, allow these 1,277 residents, give them a chance to be part of us, give us a chance to tell them that they belong here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Han. Further on the question, Mr. Conti.
Oh, sorry, one more thing. I actually invited two these non-citizen residents here and to speak, since this is we're talking about them, and a lot of town meeting members have no idea who they are and what
they have
think.
reached out to me and asked to speak, those who have wanted to speak. I'll bring that up in a moment. Mr.
Okay,
Conti,
sounds
please.
good. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Tony Conti. I'm from Precinct 2, and I'm going to be very brief because I've always believed in speaking up and being heard and sitting down and being appreciated. There's a reason. From the earliest days of Athenian democracy, becoming a member of the polity was a requirement. You had to be a citizen to participate. And there's a reason why we require people to take some period of time of residence before they can apply for citizenship. They have to become acculturated in American culture in order to be a member of our polity. And I would remind you, I'll just be very brief, I'm not going to repeat the much more articulate arguments in opposition to this proposal that have been relayed by the previous speakers. But I want to read you a line that comes from the oath of citizenship that every immigrant is required to take on becoming an American citizen, which states that I hereby declare upon oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty of whom or which I heretofore have been subject or a citizen. It's the least we can ask of those who wish to join our polity, that they become citizens. We're not asking very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. As was noted, we currently have 3 residents who have reached out to speak on the matter. It is a longstanding tradition of this meeting to allow residents who are not sitting members of town meeting to voice their positions. I'm going to ask them to join us, but get in line behind the current members who are standing. At this time, you may enter the auditorium and stand in line at the mics, please. Mr. Girius, please. You may continue. Further on the question?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Diabjurius, Precinct 8. So I am not an immigrant. I cannot speak for immigrants. I don't know what it is that every immigrant has a different... It really doesn't like me. Every immigrant has a different story. My parents were immigrants. My mother came from Nazi Germany. That's where she grew up. She didn't have a voice there. My father's Palestinian. He didn't have a country after a while. Both of those people valued voting like you would not believe. I still remember voting with my mom in the voting booth back when we had the little machines where you click the little levers. That was a long time ago. Voting was very important. Their ability to have a voice is what was important. And that's what I think we're asking for with this article, is the ability to have a voice. So one of the benefits of growing up in an immigrant family is that they didn't know anything about American history. And so I got to see America with an outsider's perspective. And so I got to see what the history of citizenship in America is. And it is not this glorious history that people are talking about. Citizenship was used to restrict the people who could vote. Article 14, or the 14th Amendment, which gave citizenship to African Americans, was very controversial because it gave them citizenship and they would then be allowed to vote. We restricted citizenship to Asians until well into this past century. If you were non-white, you were not allowed to vote. So this thing about we've always had the citizenship requirement for voting, yeah, that may have been the case, but we really restricted who could vote through who could be a citizen. And I'm not saying that the people who are against this are going back to those times, but we have to remember our history. And so having an ability to voice your wishes to government through voting is so important, especially to those people who come from, again, I can't speak for other immigrants. I know my mom coming from Nazi Germany, her voice counted like nothing there. She came over to the U.S. and all of a sudden she could vote. And that was amazingly important to her. Now, I can't ask her now if she would be in favor of this. She's 98. She probably doesn't remember anymore why she came, that whole thing. But I think it's important that we give people that ability to voice what they want to government through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Girius. Further on the question?
Madam Moderator. My name is Susan Nardone. I'm from Precinct 3. I live in 384 Main Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I am a new member to town meeting, and I never thought I would be speaking so soon, but I feel strongly about this subject. While I was born in Quincy, I am the daughter of an immigrant. I've lived here permanently since 1973. As a young girl, I remember vividly asking my father why he couldn't run for president and why he couldn't vote. Since he's now passed, I'll paraphrase his response. He said he couldn't run for president because he was not a citizen and also could not vote. At the time, being young, I didn't understand why he was not a citizen because we lived in the U.S. for so long. He served in his country's Navy as a young man and still felt faithful to his birthplace. He said he couldn't hold allegiance to two countries by becoming a U.S. citizen, even though he loved this country. He would renounce his loyalty to his birthplace of Canada and also to the family who still lived there. He was one of 13. Because this is such a hot topic, I've spoken to dozens of people living in Winchester. some of whom are naturalized citizens. All but one was against this proposal, especially the naturalized citizens. I was a little surprised. They felt by going through the naturalization process, they learned about our history, our form of government, and have earned the patriotic pride in doing so. They felt this process is something the non-citizens will miss out on if they don't go through the process. I welcome foreigners to our great nation. I want people to come here and enjoy our liberties and freedoms. I wish the process was faster and less costly. If they do not become a citizen, in my opinion, they will still hold allegiance to their country of origin. This article goes against the Constitution, and the Massachusetts law prohibits it. I have questions about the implementation process. What defines legal residence? A green card, a visa, a student visa? How do you ensure they are here legally? What if they are registered to vote and the green card or visa are not renewed? How is the town made aware of this? Are there going to be separate ballots? How do you ensure they are given the correct ballots? And we all know at the polls you can't ask for voter for an ID. The reason this is proposed is because non-citizens pay their taxes. And I'm going to, Mr. Lamonager already alluded to this. What about the property owners' rights who live out of town? They have a vested interest here, and they can't vote in our local elections. Should they now be afforded the opportunity to vote here too? There are too many questions that remain unanswered. As previously stated, I welcome everyone, and I want them to enjoy the conveniences of our fabulous town. Non-citizens receive the same protections and enjoy the same amenities as citizens do. They get police protection, fire protection, their children can attend schools, sports clubs, and the like. Being able to vote is the gold standard of freedom. If you give it to people who are not citizens, it diminishes the value and dishonors those who fought for that right. For your own personal reasons, if you do not want to become a citizen, that is your choice, and I am not judging you for it, and I want you to stay. Our forefathers stipulated non-citizens should not vote for a reason. This warrant is ambiguous, potentially costly, and ripe for fraud, whether accidentally or otherwise. Because of this, I urge you to vote no on this warrant, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Nardone. There was a question in there. I'm going to ask town council to answer it. What is the policy lead to procedures for how this would be implemented?
Madam Moderator, I think if you're asking the question, how does this take effect?
Yes, the process it would go through, and then how it would actually, I believe it has to be returned back to this body, correct?
No.
Please.
So what would happen, as alluded to in the initial presentation, is that if town meeting passes this, the select board would pass it through the state delegation, and both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives on Beacon Hill would have to pass it. It would have to be signed by the governor. As noted before, the towns that have tried this have not been able to get through that last step, but that would be the process. Once it takes effect, the implementation measures would have to be figured out on the local level. We understand from feedback from the Secretary of State's office that it would require separate registration mechanisms, at least at the moment, because there is not a state registration. You couldn't use the state registration forms for registering to vote. Otherwise, however, the town would have to figure out its own process.
Thank you. Further on the question, Ms. Ross?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Monica Ross. I am from Precinct 6, and I would like to echo the concerns of the Finance Committee, and through you, Madam Moderator, to the town clerk. I'm wondering if you could guarantee that this would not cost the taxpayers or the town any money. And further, I'm wondering if you can guarantee that there will not be any implementation issues. For example, if a non-citizen voter mistakenly received a citizen voter ballot, this could be extremely problematic, and I'm wondering how we would address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. For me to the town clerk, can you please provide additional information on the cost and implementation issues?
Sure.
Can we get a mic for her, please?
Bit of a challenge because we don't have any rules or regulations that are promulgated from the state. So yes, to answer you briefly, there is going to be a cost. I have to create a database. I have to figure out a software program. We have to be able to have a mechanism in which to track it, solely separate from what we currently do with the voter registration database that you're so familiar with when you go to the polls. There would have to be a separate list. I'd have the list of the voters, and then I'd have the list of these folks in this other category. It's a whole new territory. When I was town clerk in Woodstock, Connecticut, we did have a property ability for taxpayers to vote, and we used something called the grand list. So we took the assessor's list and we used that to check people off. Some communities will do just a resident, as many of you mentioned, but I can't really estimate the cost at this point, but I'm telling you the town meeting is $20,000, so I'll tell you the election would probably be more than that, just off the top of my head. And as far as voter fraud, did you say something about, I'm sorry, Monica, what was the second part of the question?
There's implementation issues.
Okay. Well, this would be, well, because the list would need to be separate, my understanding of what I do would be there would be very little risk that a state or federal election ballot would go to a non-citizen because the language would be very specific to say this is for town elections. So we would manage that. I don't have concerns with that from a clerical standpoint, if that helps.
Thank you, Mrs. Lannon. Further on the question? You are now in line with town meeting members, so yep, you may just please note that you are a resident.
Quinn, here you go.
And one moment, your mic is coming back to you.
First, thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you, everyone. And this is my first chance to talk in front of our town meeting. I'm not a citizen. I'm a green card holder. Before I read my sheet, I think I just want to give my understanding of some of the questions the town meeting member have been raised just above. So I think what we're talking about here is a local level election. And to my knowledge, there's no federal laws has prevented or prohibited that at the local level, it has to be a citizen to vote. It has all kinds of restrictions for federal level or maybe at the state level, but no laws has been passed in the United States to prevent this. Second thing is for the non-taxation, non-representation for taxation part, my understanding is that applies to individual level, not business, not institution. So the business in downtown area, they pay tax, they don't vote, that's okay. The third part, I think we probably shouldn't put in too much political things within the local level. I know everyone heard about communist China and communist, that's scary. And this is not about political left or right, communist or capitalist. It's about local people like you, like me, who reside here and who wants to have a voice at the local issues. So I forgot to say my name. My name is Lei Chen, and I'm a scientist and the director of a small biotech company. I lived in Winchester since 2008. Since then, I raised 2 kids here through the Winchester public school system. My younger son is a junior in high school this year. So 13 years lived in Highland Avenue. So during those years, I love this town, and I probably fall in love with it in the first sight. But the longer I lived, the longer I love it. I have volunteered in some of the activities, and mostly school-related, the parents, parents association, and I also volunteered as a soccer coach for the town travel soccer. So my two kids went through that. Hey. So some of your kids, probably I coached them. So it's a really rewarding and fun activity. So, just a few days ago when I was in downtown, I met a kid taller than me, said, "Oh, hey, Coach Lei." I said, "Oh, hey, this is the boy that I coached probably 8-10 years ago," and very shy, don't talk to people, don't aggressive on the field, but it's lovely to see them grow up. So I coached them probably for 8 years, and also volunteered in the Chinese culture school. I'm a part-time teacher there. So I know a few people, actually quite a few people, who's in the same situation as me in town. So just a few blocks of where I lived, there's two families. One family is a UK dad and American mom. Another family is a German dad and a Russian mom, interestingly. So our kids are similar age, they go to same school, so we get together pretty often. So we just chat and debate. Sometimes, initially, we criticize our government, the country we are originally from. We criticize Russia, we criticize China, we criticize Germany for our own country. And later we got familiar with each other, we criticize each other's country. But later, no, nothing of those matters. We criticize the United States government. We say, hey, the former President Trump did this bad. The current President Biden did this bad. So, but most of all, we talk about the local things. We say, oh, which kids get what teacher, right? The house was just sold, luckily, the guy bought in at the bottom. So all those things, I know they are similar as you, as me. And some of them has naturalized already. Some of them hasn't. One of the reasons, to me, is the most obvious reason is time. You probably don't know that to get this green card, for an average employment green card, it takes 7 to 9 years. And in addition to that, you have to stay 5 years to meet the legitimacy to be able to apply citizenship. And the citizenship process will take 1 to 3 years. If you add those things together, you're talking about 13 to 15 years of time without voice to be heard. So I myself is lucky. I spent 7 years to get my green card, and I'm in the process. Luckily, my wife actually just got her citizenship a few years before the pandemic. Pandemic slowed everything down. I don't know what time I can get mine, but that's okay.
Mr. Chang, your time is up.
Yeah. So to end this,
how much more time do you need?
Just 30 seconds. So at the end, I think the most recent town meeting, town election opened my eyes. Say, hey, we have all kinds of voice, we have all kinds of opinion, but all voice get heard and all opinion get expressed. Here we are, right? So I really appreciate you guys, your time and your efforts to make this town better, right? I think we can be all different opinion, but we have the same goal to keep Winchester great and to make Winchester better. I wish I can directly support you, vote for you, or maybe even I can be directly with you and vote together with you for things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Further on the question? Yes.
Good evening, town meeting members. I'll be brief. I'm going to speak to something that no one else has addressed yet. Earlier this evening, we saw that there's a number of different municipalities in Massachusetts that have already put an article similar to this forth that's going up to the State House, and they're going through the process. But it's a handful. You may or may not be aware, but New York City in December passed a similar law there. More constraint than what we're looking at today, with many more boundaries and limitations. Nevertheless, on February 2nd, a suit was filed by the Public Interest Legal Foundation against the New York City Board of Elections. Board of Elections in New York City has already retained legal counsel. This is a constitutional issue. It is argued that it is a violation of the U.S. Constitution, 15th Amendment, and it's based on the fact that it is a racially based law. Now, without arguing the merits of that, and I don't want to get into the merits of it, my concern is that this is relatively new. We haven't seen this out. We haven't seen whether it's going to be litigated. We are a small community. We have a very, very limited budget. This town does not need to be a defendant in yet one more lawsuit. We do not have the finances to defend ourselves in an action that could be litigated for many, many years. So my concern, as much as I empathize with our resident non-citizens, I think we need to be practical. I think we need to see what else is going on. I think we need to listen to Dr. Blackwell, who, said this isn't urgent. This doesn't have to happen tonight. We can delay this. We can see how this plays out in other communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mboli. Further on the question?
Hi, everybody. I'm resident of Precinct 2. My name is Man He. My family moved to Winchester last year for my kids' good education. We like living here for it's such a quiet and beautiful town. My kids are the reason why I stand here requesting for the right to vote in Winchester. One day, I saw my daughter passing by town hall. My daughter saw people holding signs and saying hello, wave out to us, supporting their candidates for town selection. She asked me, "Mom, what are you doing?" I answered they are conversion for votes. So she asked me, "What is vote?" What is you like somebody's idea, you give a stick to him or her. I tried my best. I have no such experience. So my daughter asked me, "Can you vote, Mom?" I was stuck. I'm not sure. So I talked with my husband later that day. With our check-in, he said it should be okay because we own a home here, we pay property tax and legal tax. It is constitutional, why not? I checked online. We are not allowed to vote. I feel disappointed. It's just like you pay tuition for college, but because you are not a U.S. citizen, so they say, "Oh, you can attend the college, but you are not allowed to speak in class." I kept thinking about this problem. I think I must do something. My daughter is 6 years old. She's in the age to ask so many questions for what she sees. My son is 3 years old. They are going to stay in Winchester Public School for 12 years. They will grow up in Winchester. They are U.S. citizens. They are part of the future of America. We wish them a responsible citizen who takes care of their community. But as parents, we can only tell them to be one. We must model them. So we want to have a voice in local government through the ability to vote for representatives. We are all well-educated people. I got my bachelor and master degree in China. My husband was a postdoc fellow at Harvard Medical School. For his excellent work, we got our green card recently. We respect the U.S. Constitution. What we are requesting is not unconstitutional. We live in Winchester for making a better life, not for harming the harmony and the benefits of the community. We expect Winchester to be more inclusive town. So I hope that we can vote to let out our voice. I'm appreciative for your listening. Please support our request. Give us a sticker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further on the question? Stage left, Mike. Hello.
Hello. I'm Chris Jones, Precinct 7. Back in 1979, I went to high school here in Winchester. I took an AP U.S. history class here, and I'm just, back then I would have been astounded that we've been even discussing this topic. The right to vote is for citizens, citizens of the United States, just like Tony Conti mentioned. It's an intrinsic right of a citizen. My grandparents, my great-grandparents were immigrants too. They came over to this country. They left poverty over in Europe, in Ireland, up in Canada. And they came here and they were extremely happy to get work here in the United States and to earn citizenship. My grandmother, when she would leave Massachusetts and come back to Massachusetts, she would get out of the car and kiss the ground when she got back into the state. I thought it was kind of crazy, but I said, that's how important it was to her. And I work in high tech. I work with people from all over the world. I work with green card holders. I work with people people from Asia that work really, really hard. They're smart people. I welcome you in this country. I welcome you in Winchester. Some of all the people here in Winchester that are non-citizens are working really hard for their families. They want the best for their families. I suggest that if you would like to vote in the town, become a citizen. I would welcome that. I took one of my favorite teachers here in Winchester High School was the principal for a while. She's passed away. She was my German teacher. And she was my absolute favorite teacher here at Winchester High, Sue Morse, Sue Austin. We called her Frau Austin. And she made our German class so much fun. I took German. German's not a very exciting language. It's not but she made it so much fun. We would go around, we'd sing German Christmas carols at people's homes. And years later, I wanted to work in Germany so I could learn German and learn more about German culture. I lived and worked in Germany. I was actually lucky to be there before and after the Berlin Wall came down. And I worked, I paid taxes. I didn't vote in Germany. I didn't expect to be able to vote in Germany because I don't understand the German culture as well as they do. I don't expect to be able to change laws for German schools after I leave Germany. That's their country, their rules, and I can't vote in Germany if I'm non-citizen. Again, I welcome you to our community. If you want to vote in our community, become a citizen. We'd love to have you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Further on the question, stage right, Mike.
Nick Bogovich, Precinct 8. Let me set the scene. Let's go back to Springtown Meeting 1919, okay? So the Red Sox just came off winning the World Series. Everyone's returning from the war. You know, one of our ancestors gets up and says, you know, I'm not a misogynist, but the law of the land says that women are not allowed to vote, so sorry. In my mind, we're complicating what should be a very simple thought process. Ms. Schreiber back there, Precinct 7, moved here around the same time, I think, my wife and family did, around 2009-ish. She has been a great contributor to our community. Lynch, co-president. Our kids went to preschool together. Great addition, great asset to our community, now a town meeting member after going through and getting her citizenship. The differences in our experiences, though, here in town from 2009 up until 2019 was simply that I was allowed to have a say in our town policies, and I was able to vote in our elections, and she was not. And so, for me, the question is simply why? Because I was born here? That doesn't sound like a very difficult process in my mind. Because some governing body at the state level decided that they didn't have the foresight to understand how non-citizen residents at the community level could have a voice. I think, unlike a previous speaker, I can't imagine a better way to encourage someone to earn their citizenship in this country by empowering them to have a voice in their community. So please vote in support of this article. Give all residents in town the right to have a voice in their community. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bogovich. Further on the question?
Hi, my name's Michelle McCarthy. I am from Precinct 7. I am a citizen of Ireland and the United States. My parents are immigrants from Ireland. They live here on Church Street. I don't think my mother showed up, but she threatened me if I didn't speak tonight, she would. Any of you who know her, would listen to her. I was nervous to speak out tonight. I have such a soft spot in my heart for all immigrants. If you're a child of immigrants, you know what I'm talking about. You just grow up, you think differently. And I really struggled with this, but my parents, my 3 aunts, and my 5 uncles all asked me to speak out on their behalf. They all became citizens here. It was very difficult for them, but it was a great honor. They feel strongly that becoming a citizen of the United States is a great honor, and they ask you to please vote against this amendment. I was in middle school. I remember helping my parents study for the exam. I remember going to Faneuil Hall with them. I was very emotional. I disagree with the notion that was brought up earlier that children of immigrants do not vote if their parents do not vote. Instead, I find, as a child of immigrants, and many of my friends who are, that you don't take it for granted. You vote. You know how important it is. And you raise your children with that passion as well. Because, you know, there were many, many years my parents were not allowed to vote. I'm friends with Wehan. We've stood together in many soccer fields. I am so honored to be friends with you and to serve on town meeting with you. And I think it's really important for everyone to know, because everyone might not know, that you can be on town meeting. You can reach out to town meeting members. You can get involved. You can be on PTO like my friend Liz. You can get very involved in this community. I do wish it was not so long. Thank you to the residents that spoke earlier. It shouldn't be so long, and I do feel bad about that, but I think that the wait is worth it, and I really hope that residents apply. I think that the benefits far outweigh some of the reasons that were brought up to us tonight. I believe this is a really important issue, and I do ask that if this moves forward, I strongly would like to find out, why is this not a town-wide ballot question? Why would this only be voted on by town meeting? I'm not exactly sure if that's a question for legal counsel. I mean, shouldn't this be a town-wide ballot question? Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Question to town council. Could you please provide information on why this would not be a town-wide vote?
Sure. The Massachusetts Constitution allows towns to request what's called a home rule legislation, and that goes through town meetings. And so that's simply just delegated to town meeting to make that ask and authorize the select board to make the ask. There are times when the legislation itself calls for a townwide ballot, but it's not required.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, stage right, Mike.
Thank you. Stephanie Zaremba, Precinct 2. I would like to point out that laws are ever malleable things. They literally change all the time. We change laws here literally all the time. Our voting laws changed over the history of this country all the time. As Mr. Bogovich pointed out earlier, go back a little more than 100 years, I would be standing here asking you for the right to vote. That was not true for a very long time. And so to say, well, these restrictions, this fence was put up, they were put up for a good reason. We need to be careful before we put it down. Were they put up for a good reason? I haven't heard anyone speak to the history of when we took away the right for residents, non-citizens, to vote, what those reasons were. I don't know. I don't know if anyone in this room does, but before we just take that as a given that, oh, these restrictions must be put in place for a good reason, that needs to be something we question. I also think we need to think about the differences between voting for federal, state, and local elections. If you have to wait somewhere in the ballpark of 13 to 15 years to become a U.S. citizen, in that time, frankly, at a federal level, not that much happens. Like, federal legislation, things just move so slowly. At a local level, we've built, 2 schools at that point, passed a couple of overrides. Like, the things that you need to vote on here are so much more immediately impactful. And so the right to vote in your local government is such a different thing. Lastly, the reason I got up and felt compelled to speak is Ms. Hay, who spoke earlier, her daughter and my daughter became fast friends in kindergarten, and this became very personal, watching our daughters ask questions together. And it's very hard, in that lovely, simple 5-6-year-old way. My daughter's asking me, Mom, why do you get to and she can't? And my answer is, because of where I was born. I've done nothing to work for it. I'm honored to be a U.S. citizen. I am proud, but people who are waiting those 13 to 15 years to become a citizen, man, they're working really, really hard for it, and it's very meaningful. And I don't know that just saying you have to wait that entire time for that meaning to take effect. I'm struggling with that argument. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a second? So all the new members, if you do not know what move the vote is, it means that at this point, a town meeting member feels that they have heard enough of the debate. At this point, it doesn't mean that the voices in line are not valid. It means that they feel that they have heard all the viewpoints, just maybe not from everyone. This is a votable action. At this time, I'm going to ask town meeting members who are outside of the auditorium to join us, and we will get forward. It is not a debatable motion. One moment, and we'll get the vote set up for you. Would you have that? As we wait for our members to join us, just so everyone's clear, it's 8:45. After Article 8, we will be actually hearing from the Fincom the report to the meeting. Thank you. All right, we have a question before us. The motion is to move the vote of Article 8 on our local voting rights. If you turn your attention to your clickers and we turn the green light on, and yes is for yes, green is for yes, red is for no, and you can abstain on the yellow. Clicker is not clicking.
Hang tight. We are receiving votes.
We'll keep the vote open until we can get your clicker.
If your clicker is not working, I'd like you to head out and to the cafeteria, and one of the girls will give you a new one.
So for the town meeting members, if you look at your clicker and it looks like it's turned off, hit a button, it will return it back on, and see if that solves it.
Yeah, actually, town attorney just gave me a good idea. I can record your vote manually, if you'd like. And we'll put it in the spreadsheet.
Mr. Johnson, would you be able to come up here and record your vote directly with the town clerk?
Are you receiving some?
We're receiving votes, so you can just let me know.
Okay.
Yes? Yes. So if you vote yes on this, it means that the debate is closing on Article 8, and then we'll move directly to vote on Article 8. If you vote no, it means we will continue hearing debate and discussion and questions on Article 8. This is a motion to move the vote. We are ready to close the vote. Vote is closing.
And I think, Matt, is the projector able to come up so that when you see it here, the body can see it here?
I do.
Oh, Heather, you got that?
It is up actually right now, so there's a
second.
second.
Scroll on the move the vote, or you just want to?
Yes, they do.
You do?
Yes, they do.
All right. Somebody's giving me something.
1 second, we got to get the screen up.
Here we come. All right, what do we got?
156 members voting, 104 required to pass. There's 107 in the affirmative, 47 in the negative, and the motion is approved. So now we're going to move directly into Article 8. As town meeting members should still be in here, I'm going to move directly into voting on Article 8. At this time, we're going to scroll through so you can see the votes if you are interested.
Mr. Nixon, could I ask a favor? Could you see if there's any town meeting members in the cafeteria for this vote for me, please?
We can't move to voting until we do all the scrolls, so that's what we're waiting for, so everyone can see. All right. Moving on, we are voting actually on Article 8. So majority vote of members are present is required. We now have all the members who I believe are out in the auditorium joining us. So please make your way to your clickers, and the light is on. Green means yes, that you would like to proceed with Article 8. Red means no, that you would like it to be done. Yes. Is against Article 8. That's correct. It will not proceed. Are we all set? Seeing no one rise, we're going to close the vote. There are 79 in the affirmative, 74 in the negative. There are majority required, and the motion is adopted. Take a moment to scroll.
That's right. Mr. Johnson, did you use the new clicker? Okay.
It's on there. You're under a different name. We'll get it corrected in the record. Well, because the clicker that you have was assigned to someone else, and so we need to reassign it in the computer system.
Yeah. Yes, that's my mistake, Mr. Johnson. All right, so we have 153 having voted.
At this time, I believe that town meeting could use a 5-minute break. So if you could please take a very brief break and return. The Girl Scouts are out there, and when you return, we will be going into Fincom's presentation.
busy time.
Yeah, because we're checking until 9. What if you started at 8:45 or so? Because we'll close that off at 9.
Be there, and we could.
Town meeting members, can you please take your seats? We'd like to proceed.
Let me ruminate on that for a minute. I mean, if you think that would be
I was actually in favor of. We'll be through it.
Town meeting members, please take
and
your
that
seats.
gives you a nice clear chute to come down.
All right, let me give it a think.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, see you later.
See ya.
Thank you, town meeting members. Hope you enjoyed your break. As we return, some town meeting members have requested that Fincom provide their 10 minutes to us prior to taking up Articles 16, 17, or 19. And in response, without seeing an objection, I am going to let that proceed. So, Dr. Blackwell, on behalf of Fincom, can we please hear the report of Fincom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Do I have to do anything, or will it magically appear?
No.
Great, thank you. So, thank you, Town Meeting, for your patience. Now we're ready to present our Article 1 presentation. So, at a high level, the FY22 status is strong. At the beginning of the fiscal year, our operating reserves were 14% of the revenue, and that's a strong position, but that's a starting point. So as the years progressed, after Fall Town Meeting, after now we're in the middle of Spring Town Meeting, they're no longer at 14%, as you'll hear. So fiscal responsibility is important, and that's a key message I'll stress. So in addition to FY22, there have been 2 one-time funding sources available for the town, which is great. $6 million for ARPA, you heard Mr. Mucci speak of that, and ESSER fundings for the schools, which have differing timelines. That's a total amount of $1.2 million. So our FY23 budget is a total of $142 million. And it did require $690,000 of free cash to balance. And my caution is that continued growth in expenses that exceed our available revenue will lead to an override, definitely in FY25 and quite possibly in FY24, as I'll show you. Again, a high-level summary of the FY23 projected expenses. Looking at the 4 largest categories, education, municipal, undistributed, and non-appropriated, the total is $118 million, which is an increase of a little over $5 million compared to FY22, or 4.3%. So this total number does not include capital, the enterprise fund, or revolving fund expenditures, which aren't included yet or fluctuate more year to year. So this is a good comparison of how these constant, persistent expenses change. So it's a total of 4.3%, with education growing at 4.73%, municipal at 3.54%, undistributed at 4.52%, and non-appropriated at 10%. So this is in comparison to the tax revenue. So the yearly Total tax revenue is $115 million, which is an increase of $3 million compared to FY22, and only an increase of 2.82%, which is less than 4.3. So we had to use $690K of free cash for the operating budget. Now moving to a quick revenue summary. Our analysis proposed a revenue of $142,596,182. This was a slight decrease of $366,000 over the FY22 budget because the one-time COVID funds were not recurring in FY23. Just a very slight reduction from the town manager's FY23 proposal due to 3 factors: decreased revenue for water and sewer, increased interest on funded debt, and a slight free cash increase. The new growth was targeted to $850,000. We agreed with the town manager's projection. This depends on new construction, which seems to be booming in town, but a conservative approach we agree with. This is 24% lower than in FY22. The state aid came in at $11.7 million, 1.2% larger than FY22. Local receipts are at $9.8 million, 17% up from FY22, which is showing a return to the new normal beyond COVID. So just 2 quick notes. None of our FY23 budget includes ARPA funding or ESSER funding from schools. So the major increases, categorically speaking, in FY23 are by far the contractual increases for personal services at 51% of the budget. General government was 5% or $286,000 increase. Public Works, 7% increase or $386,000. Health insurance, which you heard about on Monday night, grew by 9% or $479,000. The pension grew by 8% or $446,000. And education, mostly special education, grew by 15% or $844,000. New hires are 5% of the budget, a little over $300,000. So it's clear that the contractual increases continue to drive the budget impacts. So a quick breakdown of the personal services increase over FY22 is by department. And you'll see education is nearly 3/4 of these increases at $2.1 million. DPW is 11%, town manager, police, fire, clerk, library, all come in at 2%. HR, Council of Aging, controller, conservation, and the remaining 10 departments are all minor increases of 1%. Now let's highlight those new positions. It's a total FTE of about 7 for a cost, as I mentioned, $300,000, and that includes the Conservation Commission, whose agent position is now being increased to a full 1 FTE. Police, which is adding another half-time dispatch position. The recreation is having its clerk become full-time, which has no budgetary impact because it's an enterprise fund. And then the schools have the proposed 4 ads for world language at the high school, language-based program at VO, language-based program at McCall, and 4 additional kindergarten aides. So this $300,000, let me remind you, is not the total cost, but there are also impacts to health insurance and OPEB costs. And here's a summary of our proposed changes to the town manager's FY23 budget. They're really minor in sum, with a total general fund impact of just $850. So there was one change to the town manager budget, a decrease of $16,000. We added $9,000 for contractual car allowances, removed $25,000 for a proposed study. For the controller office, there were some retirements and mid-year step increases that translated to a savings of around $18,000. The assessor had a higher quote, so we increased that budget by $9,000. The Conservation Commission, we moved part of their new request to DPW, so a net decrease of $10,000 there. General Services savings of $400 thanks to digitization. The Historical Commission did not receive a grant that it applied for, so our matching contribution was removed. That was $15,000. And then there was a $500 addition for recording secretary. Department of Public Works, the initial town manager's budget was too high, so we reduced that, added $10,000 for a quote that came in too high, and shift the $10,000 from the Conservation Commission. Environmental remediation already included contingency costs, so we decreased it by $500. Vocational education, there were two factors. One, the anticipated debt service amount was less by $64,000 for the New England Metro Tech, which we voted for this January. Also, there were more students who are attending Minuteman and Medford Tech schools, so that was an increase in tuition of $98,000. The interest on funded debt, we had more accurate information for the Lynch feasibility study, the transfer station engineering, and actuals for the Washington Street, which were offset by state aid. And then finally, water and sewer, the impact of the local debt and the MWRA capital changes netted a decrease of $25,000. So now I want to walk you through something we did a little differently this year, our 3-year plan. So typically we show you projections for FY 23, 24, 25, similar to what the town manager showed you on Monday. What we did this year, rather than setting a few items and projecting their impact, we looked at 10 years of historical data. And we're not otherwise imposed amounts are required by legal requirements or previously established policy. We used this 10-year information, eliminated 2 extreme values, and then calculated an average and a standard error. So we felt this would better project what the next 3 years could look like. So in statistics, it's called confidence intervals. So we created a 95% confidence band. So you had that certainty that the operating reserves will end up within that band. So here's our assumptions on the steps and columns, contributory retirement, all motions at the spring 22 meeting pass, but future free cash spending is limited to $1.1 million annually, which is a stretch because in the past 3 years, I think the average has been around $4 million spent at spring and fall town meeting. We also changed our assumption for turnbacks. Now we're assuming it will be 1% of total revenue rather than a flat $1 million. Okay, so without further ado, let me show you what that
Dr.
looks like.
Blackwell, you reached your 10 minutes.
May I have 1.5 minutes more?
Seeing no objection of 1.5 minutes on our Fincom's review of our money, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So what you'll see here is a light blue band. It's hard to see. There's a blue line, that's our average value. And then the light shading is our confidence interval. And then the green band is our 6 to 10% reserves. And then the stars I've added, those are the town manager's projections. So you'll see in FY23, we have good agreement between the conservative, average, and more aggressive spending. However, that shifts in FY24, and you'll see our average is at 6%. So historically speaking, we will need an override if this type of spending continues. The upper bound is 9.3%, the lower is 3%. And then in FY25, the most conservative approach is just about at 6%, so we'll definitely need an override then. So why is this important? So this is a nice chart shown last year by Enzo Racionato, and if you look at history, when you have an override that's successful, typically the next one fails. So what we have coming up in the pipeline is an override for Lynch in 23, and then operating override, either in 24 or 25. If they're too close, we fear they'll compete with each other. And if you look down below, these are the serious consequences if an override fails. Serious austerity, job cuts, loss of services. So there's also uncertainties. We don't know the outcome of the contractual negotiations for the 6 unions. We don't know what school enrollment will be. We don't know the impact of inflation, the increases in healthcare costs, or if there will be an impact of new COVID variants. Finally, I would like to thank my Finance Committee members. After listening to the presentations on the first night, I realized we don't have photographs. Our presentations are quite dull. So I wanted to point out and thank all my members.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell, for that informative presentation. Moving to page 20 of your green. Yes, Mr. Jarius.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Diab Jarius, Precinct 8. I listened with great interest to that. I love the Fincom presentations. However, the use of confidence intervals, I think, is a concern. As a scientist who knows enough about statistics to stay away from it, when you give a confidence interval, that means you have either run many models to understand the distribution of results, or you have a really good handle on the errors of your input. And perhaps Fincom has done all of those things, but from that presentation, I don't know how, the assumptions that were made, how good are they? What are the errors on those? So while I do agree with the nominal notion that we're going to run out of money, I am very concerned that you put words like 95% confidence interval, because you need to have the statistics to back that up. Thank you.
Mr. Diab, going forward, can you please direct your comments regarding Fincom's presentation during their hearing?
I'm sorry?
Fincom presented their information, and if you have concerns about that, can you direct it directly to Fincom outside of town meeting or on when we're talking about a direct article?
Madam Moderator, we were just, I don't know that I would have had a chance since they just redid their numbers. And I think this is of import to town meeting to understand that there are concerns about their numbers.
Yes, the right time to talk about the numbers is when the budget is being debated. It's not at this time.
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean at a later article?
Yes.
Oh, I apologize.
Yep, or directly to them in their hearing for town meeting. All right, moving to page 20, Article 16, which is the East Side CIP Project Sanitary Sewer Survey. It is moved and seconded that $382,215.22 be appropriated for the East Side CIP Project 1 Sanitary Sewer Evaluation Survey, also known as SSES, including repair of structural defects and identified as part of the Phase 2 SSES project, and all design, engineering, construction, and all other costs incidental and related thereto, and further that this appropriation be funded by the unexpended existing MWRA balances set forth below for which the projects are complete and as noted in your motion booklet. Proponent of the motion is our town manager, Ms. Beth Rudolph.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good evening, town meeting members. I'm here this evening. Let me go to the next slide. I'm I'm here this evening to present Article 16, which seeks funding for Project 1 of the town's East Side Sanitary Sewer Capital Improvement Program. Mass DEP regulations require communities to have ongoing programs to reduce infiltration and inflow into their sanitary sewer systems, with the goal of eliminating occurrences of sanitary sewer overflows. As many of you will recall, we've been coming to town meeting for many years to fund the engineering and construction of various improvements to the town's sanitary sewer system to comply with these regulations, typically through the use of MWRA funds. I'm happy to report that in 2021, the town completed the investigation and rehabilitation of our sanitary sewers on the west side of town. With that work complete, the town submitted a plan to Mass DEP outlining the proposed capital improvement program for sewer rehabilitation work on the east side of town. Article 16 seeks funding to complete that investigation associated with Project 1 of the program. The work includes video inspection and flow isolation of approximately 50,000 linear feet of sanitary sewer and inspection of 270 sewer manholes. The appropriation request is for $382,215.22, to be exact, which will be funded through the use of unexpended existing MWRA balances for which the projects are already complete. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any recommendations from the Select Board, Mr. Mucci?
The Select Board unanimously voted to take favorable action on this article. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have recommendations from Fincom, Dr. Blackwell?
The Finance Committee voted unanimously in favor of this article.
Thank you. At this time, is there any town meeting members who have questions or comments regarding the article? Please approach the microphones.
Madam Moderator, through you to the town manager, I understand inflation or infiltration, but what's the inflow from the sewer system?
Sure. So when we talk about infiltration, inflow, I&I for short, it's a standard term used in the engineering world. Infiltration is when you have cracked pipes, loose joints that allows groundwater to go into your sewer system. Inflow is when there's other sources, so if people have either illicit connections to the sanitary sewer system, or if there are cases where sump pumps or downspouts or other sources of inflow from the drainage system is connected into the sanitary sewer system. Those types of inflows during times of heavy precipitation can lead to sanitary sewer overflows. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other town meeting member rise? Oh. Can we please get a microphone? Unfortunately, WinCamp can't pick you up if you don't have a microphone in front of you.
Thank you. It's a quick one. Carol Savage, Precinct 5. There's just been a lot of construction on some of those roads. So mine is just a question of what the timing of this and how will you communicate this so we can tell folks in our precincts where to find information about it.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. To the town manager, can you please provide more information on the timing and the impact on the roads this will have?
So this is just the investigation phase. So the video inspection is just a TV crew out there, surface work, maybe some minor road closures or detours. Flow isolation is done within the pipe itself, no excavation, and then the manhole inspections is also just a visual inspection. So I don't expect there to be too much disruption with this phase. The next phase would be construction, which is obviously more invasive.
Thank you. Seeing no other town meeting member rise, town meeting members from outside, if you could please come join us. We will be voting on Article 16. The green light is on. You may begin if you have not. All right, voting has begun. It is a majority vote. No, not yet. Majority vote of members present is required. At this time, we will be closing the vote. If you need me to tell you that the red button means that you would like it adopted, and the green button means that you would like it to be lost. Did I say the wrong color button? Oh.
Yes means you're adopting, no means you're not.
What did I say? Oh, okay. Let's start over again.
So yes means yes.
It's getting late. It's getting late. The green means that it is adopted, and it means yes. And the red button means it is lost and no.
All right.
A majority vote is required, and at this time, voting is closed.
All right.
Of the 154 members voting, 153 voting, someone snuck it in the last second. There's 152 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. The affirmative has it, and the motion is adopted. Moving on, I do not think you need me to continue to scroll through this, so we are going to move on to the next article that is before us this evening. Number 17, the fire department compressor. It is located on page 21. Of your Town of Winchester 2022 Town Meeting Motion Booklet. It is moved and seconded that the town appropriate $45,000 from free cash for the replacement of the fire department's compressor and filling station for the self-contained breathing apparatus, also known as SCBA, and all other costs incidental and related thereto. The proponent of the motion is the Select Board. On behalf of the Select Board, Ms. Brady.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
One moment.
Thank you. The self-contained breathing apparatus fill station is designed to fill the self-contained breathing apparatus that firefighters use to go into hazardous environments and breathe clean air, such as in smoke, hazmat, or chemical spills. The fill station is an explosion-proof filling station with storage tanks, electronic control equipment, which can screen for carbon monoxide. I'll show you the current filling station and compressor. This filling station is over 20 years old, so thinking back, that's 2002. It was been serviced and repaired multiple times and actually can no longer be serviced properly. There are no longer critical parts available for repairs. It's intended to operate in automatic mode. Right now it's only operating in manual mode, is not able to be operated automatically. And it's crucial for firefighter safety and proper regulated air. At the time, it needs replacement before there's a catastrophic failure. The total replacement cost for this a CBA filling station is $63,307. The fire department received a $19,000 grant from the Massachusetts FY22 Firefighter Safety Equipment Grant Program. That's the maximum amount that Winchester was eligible to receive based on the number of residents in town. The deficit there is $44,307, and so we're requesting town meeting's vote to appropriate $45,000 in free cash for the replacement of the fire department's compressor and filling station for the SCBA. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a recommendation by Fincom? Chair of Fincom, Dr. Blackwell.
The Finance Committee voted unanimously in support of this.
Are there any questions or comments or statements? For the proponent. For the proponent.
Hi, I'm Catherine Bauer, Precinct 8. I just have a question that occurred to me. I wonder if the current piece of equipment, as old as it is, has any value, and I can't imagine it would be very much, but I'm just suddenly curious what the town does with old equipment like that. Can it be sold even for scrap, and what happens with any revenue that might be generated from that, or are you just paying someone to take it away?
Is the fire chief present? Okay, give us one moment while the fire chief joins us, so they may answer that question. Here we go. Come on down. You're the next contestant at town meeting. So our fire chief, could you provide information on how the equipment will be, what will happen with it after, and is there any way to receive money from selling it? What happens with the equipment at this time?
The equipment will be scrapped. It can't be sold because it's non-functionable. It's not usable for any other department to be able to use it. If it was usable, we wouldn't be asking for the funding to replace it. So we would end up just turning it in and scrapping it, Madam Moderator.
Thank you for that information. Any other questions or comments from town meeting members? Seeing no members rise, I believe that we are ready for the vote. Town meeting members, if you could please join us in the auditorium. And also, can you please stay with us through the duration, as the next article might move fast. A majority vote of the members present is required. This is for Article 17, which is a fire department compressor. If you press the green button, the yes, that means that you would like it to be adopted and purchased. Fixed, or I believe it's purchased actually. And if you hit no, you would not, and that it would be lost. The green light is on. Please make your votes. Everyone all set? All right, let's close the vote. The 152 members voting, 152 are in the affirmative and none are in the negative. The affirmative has it and the motion is adopted. Moving on to Article 19. This will be the last and final article of this evening. It is on page 23 of your green booklets. Motion number 1, it is moved and seconded that the town transfer $179,815 from free cash to the fiscal year 2022 Department of Public Works Snow and Ice Personnel Service Budget Account 0141711. Proponent of the article is the town manager in conjunction with the Finance Committee. On behalf of the... one moment. On behalf of the proponent, our town manager.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I will be presenting Article 19, which seeks funding from free cash or other available funds to supplement various FY22 budgets. This is a standard article each year and is co-sponsored by the Finance Committee. This spring there are 7 motions. Motions 1 and 2 request funding to eliminate deficits in the snow and ice budget for FY22, with total transfers of $378,367. Of this, $369,608 is proposed to be transferred from free cash, and $8,759 is proposed to be transferred from the DPW snow and ice equipment budget. Motions 3 and 4 are seeking transfers into the DPW maintenance and building personal services accounts in the amount of $40,000 and $45,000 respectively. The additional funds are needed this year in part due to unanticipated costs to prepare for Parker School for preschool activities last fall, as well as COVID-related protocols and staff medical leaves, and overtime costs associated with the significant flooding events we had last summer and fall. Motion 5 restores $106,500 to the Fincom's FY22 reserve fund for requests funded since fall 2021 town meeting. $52,500 of this is funded from the water and sewer enterprise, water and sewer retained earnings, since it was used to make an emergency purchase of equipment for the DPW that broke unexpectedly. Motion 6 supplements the planning board budget by $1,000 to cover additional recording secretary costs. And motion 7 transfers $125,000 from free cash to supplement the FY22 legal budget. The town has incurred additional unexpected legal expenses this year due to ongoing litigation in the appeal of various ZBA and planning board decisions, redevelopment of the Waterfield lot, taking of the Washington and Swan Street parcel, contract negotiations, and unexpected personnel matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a recommendation by the Select Board?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Select Board voted unanimously to support this article.
Did you want to give your recommendation on all the motions?
Yes, the Select Board on motions 1 through 7 voted unanimously to support each motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Recommendation on Fincom?
The Finance Committee voted unanimously in favor of motions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Motion 7 was a little more difficult because while we understand this fiscal year had extra legal expenses, we've seen a pattern over the past few years of overspending the legal budget. While we approve this, 9 in favor and 2 against, we unanimously agree there should be greater planning of the legal budget in future years to understand the strategy of the Select Board and to increase future years, fiscal legal budgets to increase future budgets for the legal account. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Any other boards or committees with recommendations? Seeing none rise, any town meeting members with any questions or comments?
Madam Moderator, through you to the town manager, I also noticed the legal budget, and in the controller's report, I saw that the expenses didn't seem that out of line. So my question is, how did we come up with this number? How do we know that we're going to be that far over when we're at 77% of the budget now, and maybe we should be at 72? I didn't quite understand where the calculation came from.
Thank you. To the town manager, can you please provide town meeting information about the current expenditures of legal and the amount asked from free cash and the difference?
So there are 2 categories within the legal budget. One is in-house counsel, and the other is outside counsel. The in-house counsel, I ran our munis report this afternoon, so these numbers are up to date, is at 86.8% spent, and the outside counsel is at 96% spent. So using kind of where we are today and projecting out what we have left to do through the end of this fiscal year, knowing that we have some upcoming work on the Waterfield lot, some work on hopefully issuing an RFP with respect to the Washington Swan Street parcel. We have contract negotiations, and we have ongoing litigation that we have to prepare for and be in court for. So that we use kind of our knowledge of what those activities were to project out what we need for the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. Further on the question.
Yeah, my name's John Miller. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 6. Could you describe what the nature of the legal services are that is being provided with respect to the Waterfield lot between last year and today?
Can you please provide, Town Manager, information for town meeting regarding the legal services for the Waterfield lot?
Sure. So since last spring, the town has first worked with a working group to review kind of where we were with the Waterfield lot process. The town manager and the select board have negotiated a deal with Civico over the past several months. And we're preparing for Springtown meeting to bring a land development agreement and proposed ground lease to town meeting for review. So that is the active work that's going on right now with legal counsel to draft that document and to review the document with Civico's counsel.
Any other further questions or comments from town meeting? Seeing no member rise, I believe that we are ready for the vote. So just, I should have clarified, we are going to go through, they did all their presentations and questions, and we're just going to go through all the 7 motions and take votes. I'm going to try with a voice vote first, since we have all the members in here. I ask them to stay, and if need be and they're close, we will then go to our clickers. So, majority vote required on motion number 1. All those in favor? All those opposed? The yeas have it. It is adopted. Motion number 2, it is moved and seconded that the town transfer $189,793 from free cash and $8,759 from the fiscal year 2022 Department of Public Works Snow and Ice Equipment budget 0141713 to the fiscal year 2022 Department of Public Works Snow and Ice expense budget 0141712. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. It is moved and seconded that the town transfer $40,000 from free cash to the fiscal year 2022 Department of Public Works Maintenance Personnel Service budget account 0141211. All those in favor? All those opposed? Ayes have it. It is moved and seconded that the town transfer $45,000 from free cash to the fiscal year 2022 Department of Public Works Buildings Personnel Service budget account 0141311. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. It is moved and seconded that the town transfer $54,000 from free cash and $52,500 from water and sewer retained earnings to the fiscal year 2022 reserve fund budget account 0194302. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion number 6, it is moved and seconded that the town transfer $1,000 from free cash to the fiscal year 2022 Planning Board Personnel Services budget account 01440114201. My apologies. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion number 7, it is moved and seconded that the town transfer $125,000 from free cash to the fiscal year 2022 legal expense budget, account 0115102. All those in favor? All those opposed? Please get your clickers out. Yep.
Folks, the slide will say just motion, we'll just say Article 19, but we are only voting on 7, okay? We just aren't going to flip it at this late hour.
So this is motion number 7 on Article 19. It is to transfer $125,000 from free cash for the legal expense budget. Yes, green means you're in favor, red means you are not. Please take your vote now. I'm going to close the vote. With 115 in the affirmative, 36 in the negative, the affirmative has it, and the motion is passed. This marks the end. I'm going to let them scroll through just because we're at the end. This is at the end of our business for today. We will return next week on Monday, and we will be starting with Article 13, the South Reservoir Dam, presented by Capital Planning Committee. Thank you so much, everyone, and I wish you all the best this weekend. Can I have a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Alan Iden, and welcome to our second session of Winchester Spring 2022 Town Meeting, today, Thursday, April 28th. The meeting is just wrapped up, so let's cover what got covered tonight, what was expected to be a controversial, and was a controversial Article number 8. This was a proposal, citizens' petition, to enable all adult residents of Winchester to be able to vote in town elections regardless of whether they were citizens of the United States or not. Again, this article would petition the Massachusetts General Court, the legislature, to allow the town to do this, called a home rule petition. We heard first from Philip Cooney, who was the proponent of this from the Network of Social Justice. He said 1,300 local residents are not citizens but pay taxes and participate in the town, yet they cannot vote. Said other municipalities in other states have approved this type of measure. Apparently none in Massachusetts yet, although some of them have petitioned the court to do this. I believe the figure was about 10 communities have petitioned the court, but at this time none have been approved. He said additional costs would be minimal, just separate registration lists for non-citizens. Susan Verdicchio, just retired from the Select Board, detailed the history of voting rights in the USA. The Select Board voted in favor. The Fincom held back because they weren't sure of a financial impact to the town, and the Planning Board voted in favor. And then we began a long string of comments by town meeting members, both for and against. I can recap some of them. There were too many to detail each one. First town meeting member said non-citizen voting is not in the history of the country. It violates the state laws, and in this town meeting member's opinion, devalues the value of citizenship, urging a no vote. Another town meeting member said the citizens' voting rights are precious, and this lowers the bar. There's a 5-year waiting period should make you appreciate American values, that non-citizens still enjoy rights, urging a no vote. Another town meeting member said some property owners are taxpayers, but they're not residents and therefore cannot vote. This town meeting member said this makes a mockery, in their words, mockery of citizenship, also urged a no vote. Another town meeting member said they're not allowed to vote on big decisions. Non-citizens are not allowed to vote on big decisions like overrides, but are very involved in school activities nevertheless, urged a yes vote. Another town meeting member said, self-identified as a resident alien, pays taxes, raised kids, felt welcome, and celebrates immigrants in their process to become citizens, urging a no vote. Another town meeting member came to the U.S. 30 years ago, became a citizen, very involved in the Chinese community, said 15% of the Winchester's population are Asian. They're very involved in the community. But he also noted that China does not allow dual citizenship. So this presents a problem for Chinese citizens becoming citizens in the United States, and requires them to obtain a visa to visit relatives back in China. He urged a yes vote. Another town meeting member said that they noted that our citizenship vote renounces citizenship in other countries, urging a no vote. Another town meeting member, through history, voting was restricted on the basis of sex and race, urging a yes vote. We heard from Mary Ellen Lannon, the town clerk, when somebody asked about the financial impact of this. She said they cannot estimate the cost at this time, that there was some cost in preparing 2 separate voting lists, but did not have an estimate of that cost. A non-citizen and non-town meeting member was allowed to speak and said, "The longer I live here, the more I love it," participates as a soccer coach, and noted that citizenship application takes 7 to 9 years. Again, urging a yes vote. Another town meeting member said New York City has passed a similar law, but there's a suit in process to block it as an unconstitutional issue and racist. She noted that the town probably does not have the resources to make a legal fight, and urged that the town wait and see what happens in other communities, urging a no vote. And another town meeting member noted to spend time in Germany and participated and paid taxes there, but could not vote there. There was urging a no vote. Town meeting member Roger Wilson then moved the question at 8:45 after about an hour and a half of debate. Moving the question, of course, terminates debate on it if it passes, and it passed by 107 to 47. And that meant the town meeting moved right on to a vote on this Article 8, and it passed by a very narrow margin, 79 to 74. Town meeting took a recess after that. Everybody needed a break. After the break, we came back and we heard from the Finance Committee's report that was not being able to deliver on Monday. Among the things that were noted in that report were $6.8 million that the town is receiving in ARPA funds, COVID-related funds. They are not included in the budget. Said for an FY23 budget, an increase of about $5 million, or 4.3%, but tax revenues are only anticipated to increase about 2.5%. New revenue growth is down. Contractual increases are driving the increase in the budget, and education is a major driver of those contractual pay increases. She detailed the difference with the town manager's budget and said that the Fincom, Finance Committee, had worked on a 3-year plan. They looked at the last 10 years of data they said would better project the next 3 years. She said the committee decided an operational override is almost certain for FY25, possible for FY24, and also give a list of the losses that the town would have incurred if the override in FY20 had failed, the number of personnel decreases, etc. Again, that being a report, there was no vote on it. Moved on to Article 16, an appropriation of $382,000 for a East Side sewer project. Excuse me. What we learned there was that the MWRA, Mass Water Resources, requires the town to do ongoing work to reduce infiltration into the sanitary sewer system. And basically this means leaking pipes that bring water into the sanitary sewer, like street runoff and things like that, and also people making illegal connections like sump pumps that should not go into the sanitary sewer but just into the regular storm sewers. This was going to be funded by unexpended balances, and it passed by 152 to 1. Article 17 was a request to remove $45,000 of free cash to replace the fire department's compressor. This compressor is used to refill the air tanks at the fire station. We heard from the fire chief that there was no value to the old compressor, so there was no so-called trade-in value. That was Article 17, was passed by a 152 to 0. And the last article tonight was Article 19, and this was about 7 motions to move free cash, move amounts from free cash to balance budgets in the FY22 down, mostly DPW funds. Some of them were COVID-related. All of them passed, but there was a challenge to a $125,000 motion to increase the legal budget. Apparently, some town meeting members felt that this was a little too generous, but when the vote was taken, that did pass. And that brought us to the end of the evening. We'll be reconvening next Monday to begin the process of the budget, and with a little luck, maybe wrapping it up. So that's our recap of tonight's second session, Winchester Spring 2022 Town Meeting. I want to remind you you're watching Wincam, Winchester's viewer-supported television. We thank you for that. To learn more and how you can support our mission, go to www.wincam.org. So with that, we thank you for watching tonight. I'm Alan Iden. For all of us here in the Wincam staff here at Winchester High School, we thank you for watching and wish you a good night, and we'll see you next Monday.